Office of Director, Rosamond Municipal Advisory Council.
For the Office of the Director of the Municipal Advisory Council.
I state your name.
I, Dennis Sheldon,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California.
that I take this obligation freely
That I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of which I'm about to enter.
Okay, you're now officially board members. You need to sign your.
We did.
I second. Okay.
Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you.
Edwards Air Force Base, and I know this because for several years I was the environmental and public affairs guy, is on the Superfund list, which is called the National Priorities List. We don't get Superfund money, but we are on the National Priorities List, and as such we had to partner up with the state of California, with the Department of Toxic Substance Control, and the Mountain Region Water Quality Control Board, and California, or US EPA, and come into agreement to find all the sites, identify them, and eventually get to a record of decision as what to do about them, and clean up. This has to do with stuff that got loose, that may be polluted. Part of that whole process is to form a restoration advisory board. This is citizens from the community, the communities that surround the base and the communities on the base, that either are or consider themselves to be affected by whatever got spilled and the cleanups that are proposed. Rosamond is one of several communities that surround the base, which include Lancaster and Mojave, California City, North Edwards, and Boron. 5 of those 6 are in Kern County. Our representative is Wild, you said, Bill Gaddis, and he's here tonight. Part of his responsibility is to update us on what's going on. So, Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you. What do you have for us?
All right. You know, I know a little bit about Bill. Bill is a long-term resident of Rosamond. His wife and kids, his kids all attend Rosamond schools. One is a accomplished flautist and very musically inclined are his other daughters. His youngest daughter is now, what, starting senior high?
Junior high, 6th grade. Can't believe it.
6th grade already.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and the RMAC directors and board members and members of the public. I'm Bill Gaddis, and I'm the Rosamond Public Representative to the Edwards Air Force Base Restoration Advisory Board. We refer to that as the RAB. I want to give thanks to the Environmental Office for putting a lot of the material together that I'm going to cover. I made it my own, but they're the source of a lot of this material. We also have some visual things over here for you. I'm not really going to talk a whole lot to those, but I'll be here for the remainder of the meeting, so if you have a break, you can see those. And I want to recognize Rebecca Hobbs. She's a program manager.
Raise your hand, Rebecca.
And so she's going to answer any of the hard questions that I can't answer. I'm just kidding. And so I want to talk about environmental restoration, the RAB, my involvement, a little bit about Facebook and what's out there that everyone can see, upcoming meeting, and ways that we can raise public awareness. So environmental restoration the emphasis there is on protecting human health, and the environment, to address past releases of hazardous substances, and that affects groundwater, that affects soil, that affects the air. Just a little bit about Edwards Environmental Restoration. The funding for Edwards Environmental Restoration comes from the Defense Environment Restoration Account, and between 1997 to 2014, $406 million has been expended out at Edwards. And there's a large base area, as many of you know, reaching into 3 counties there, Kern County primarily, but also some in San Bernardino and Los Angeles County. The highlights there on the chart, the blue highlight is, I want to say, yeah, 3 and 7. So they break up the compliance or the environmental restoration areas into operating units, and 3 and 7 encompass the biggest part. There's also other areas: main base, south base, north base, AFRL, and there's probably something there that I forgot. This kind of gives you a breakout of the progress of environmental restoration. 465 total sites since we started tracking them, and of those, I believe it is 311 that are closed. So that means about 154 are open, and they're in various stages of restoration. Some of them are in the study phase. Some of them have had a record of, or some of them are have a record of decision. Some of them are in design, construction, the actual remediation, and long-term management.
What did take it close?
That's a really good question, and I don't know that I can fully answer that.
We actually, if it's soil and groundwater, we have to meet the regulatory standards for the US EPA, and in some cases the state, depending upon how we negotiate with the regulatory agencies. So once we believe that the contamination has been cleaned up to a level where it's no longer a danger to human health and the environment based on a whole bunch of science that those agencies have done, then we propose to them that we close it. And if they agree, then we're able to. Otherwise, we have to negotiate what additional work we need to do until they're happy.
And what is a record of decision?
A record of decision is, if you don't mind, I'll just go through real quick the list. Okay, so site inspection, we go out, kind of find out what's there. We look at maps. We talk to people who worked at the base before. We don't do any intrusive work. We just kind of look around to see what might be out there that's a problem. Remedial investigation is when we actually go in the field. So we take soil samples, we take groundwater samples, we get definitive information on where we have contamination. Feasibility study, based on that contamination, whether it's in the soil or groundwater, how deep it is, what kind of lithology there is in the area, whether it's bedrock or soil, alluvium, or what kind of soils we have. We look at possible ways to clean it up. So that's the feasibility study. And in the feasibility study, we propose what we believe the best remedy would be. Once everybody's on board with what we've decided, we document it in a record of decision. And that's actually what says what the remedy is going to be, and also the different components we have to make up that remedy. We design the remedy during the remedial design, then we construct it, and we operate it. Once we've operated it long enough that we no longer have contamination above regulatory limits, we're not actively cleaning anymore. We're just being sure, for example, that the contaminants don't rebound if we leave it alone. We go into long-term management phase. We also go to long-term management for things like landfills for 30 years or until there's no contamination left. We have to look at landfills, so that's considered long-term management.
So landfill get long-term management, but a water well get closed if it's kind of a certain standard. That's the difference.
Right, correct. Yeah, the landfill, as long as there's a threat, posed threat to human health or the environment, we have to continue managing it.
Local communities. There's also Air Force Environmental Restoration Project managers, like RAB's not a decision-making body, and by that, what we're saying is those public reps don't make decisions, but we provide advice to the government decision makers. And those are the communities that are represented, the little white dots up there. Rosamond is one, everything from Cal City down to Lancaster, from AFRL and Boron. So there's a number of those communities that you notice that they're on Edwards. Main base, south base, north base. And that's really because there's people spending significant amount of time there, right? Some of them, including me, working. So the environment at Edwards affects all of us in some way. So the roles and responsibilities of the RAB community members provide advice to the Air Force on what are we hearing from our community? What are we hearing from community contacts, and what are concerns? And I can tell you right now, I don't hear much, and I know this is one of the forums maybe that maybe we can hear some of those concerns. Another role is to review and comment on documents and briefings that are given, to discuss key issues, to recommend project priorities, and the RAB in 2003 had a big impact in terms of out towards North Base, cleaning up perchlorate, and recommending some very advanced type of remediation, and so there's a success story there that a lot of that contamination has been removed, hundreds of pounds of perchlorate and millions of gallons of water have been
What's
purified.
perchlorate, how to get there?
It was rocket. It was rocket from solid rocket fuel, and it's from JPL rocket stands out there.
And you say new technology that includes like bacteriology, or what do you
I don't remember the exact.
In this case, it's a pump and treat kind of technology, but we literally pump it out of the ground, treat it in a system that uses heat, and then re-inject it. But we do have places where we're using what's called in situ bioremediation, where we've got naturally occurring microbes, and we give them food, and if we give them food, they're happy and they eat the contamination for us. So we are doing some in situ bio kind of stuff on base, just not that.
When it's appropriate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're reviewing things like the priority for cleanup, and we would get a status. In fact, in our May 2015 meeting, we're going to get a status on the last 6 months and on the activities. So, but sometimes the RAB has an influence in terms of priority. And then we also have an input in terms of what's the impact going to be to our local communities. Are they trucking the waste out? Just you can. It depends on the remediation. So what have I been doing? I've not been doing as much as I need to be doing, but one of those first things, and it's kind of abbreviated, but we've got a Facebook page that we've only had out there 2 to 3 years. And so I help proof that page, look at that, see if that's appropriate, see if it's working for the information that we're trying to convey. We had a community involvement plan, ways to get local public involvement, and so I gave inputs as a RAB member to that. I encouraged people in the local community also to comment on that. Of course, I go to RAB meetings and review documents. We've had several tours out on the base to get more aware. I've actually been out to that site on Liffit at North Base and seen the rocket stands, the remnants of what's left there, and other places on base as well. So the last thing I do, and I could be wrong on this if it's quarterly, but as often as I get these report to shareholder pamphlets, I pass them out to RCSD. There you go. It's usually in the window up where people go to pay their water bill. So.
We mail that too, looks like you can get, is there a way you get on the mailing list or what?
Yeah, if you contact the person on the back,
Yes.
they'll be happy to put you on.
Can't believe my picture's not there, but. All right. I wanted to point out just a couple things. If you can see an awful lot of information on this page, and it's not necessarily apparent. I know the first couple times I was on this page, I'm going, where is the information? And you have to click. Let me go back up. You have to click this More button right there, and you'll see some of these other things that are there. You'll see that there's a welcome page, and then there's information on the public reps, the environmental restoration program team. Rebecca's one of those folks listed there. The regulators, that's like Dennis was mentioning earlier, California's Department of Toxic Substances Control, and these are folks that are at our meetings. And then you can actually view the report to shareholders online. There's more about the RAB, and I think the most important thing here is you can get to the minutes of the meetings, and it's not just a set of minutes, it's the briefing slides that were presented at the meetings, and that's pretty good information sometimes. I wanted to highlight a couple of upcoming public meetings. The first one is 5 March at 5:30 at RCSD, and the key discussion there is a dispute about the toxicity criteria for one of the areas that's being cleaned up, South AFRL. So it's a specific, very specific. I just started reviewing some of the language of the dispute.
What's AFRL?
What's AFRL?
Yeah, I don't think everybody knows what that means.
The Air Force Research Lab. We would call it the Rocket Lab. It's on the boron side of the base. You can see it, Lehman Ridge, and well, yeah.
I guess the question is, what's toxicity criteria? Do you know what it is?
It's the regulatory limits that we need to clean up to.
Well, I know the Erosion Community Service District is dealing with arsenic, but now we're dealing with chromium-6. Is that anything to do with
Right,
that?
we always look at that kind of stuff. We also have jet fuel solvents from past Air Force activities that we look at.
Yeah, you're talking about naturally occurring, you're talking
Right,
about
so we're, right.
man-made crap that got spilled in.
We actually have agreements that we don't have to clean up anything that's naturally occurring, so we have levels of what's naturally occurring on the base, and anything that's elevated above that due to Air Force activity, we have to clean up. So it's determining to what levels we have to clean up those other contaminants.
And who determines that? The federal government then?
It's actually, the dispute is related to US EPA, County EPA, Air Force decided between those three agencies what the levels need to be.
semi-annual RAD meeting. I think it's the 14th of May. I put question marks about that. It's a Thursday. It's usually a Thursday, and it's usually in the second week of May. So I think that's when it is. Those are open meetings, but I tell you, and I've missed a few RAD meetings, but we do not have the public represented at these meetings at all, except for the public reps, and that's not what we mean by the public. We don't get anyone at these meetings from any of those communities up there. You could have the meeting in Mojave, and you will not get anyone outside of the Mojave rep and the people that are normally on the board. You could have it in Rosamond, and same thing. Consistently, the last 3 to 4 years that I've been on the board, it's been that way. Apparently people aren't too concerned.
I've done for 22 years. First, it was a different name, but the same kind of idea, and we just don't have people.
TRCs.
Yeah.
So that gets to one of my last slides, raising more public awareness. Obviously, there's the what's Edwards doing, and the nice little glossy pamphlet that gets RCSD is one way of getting the word out. I occasionally post something to the Eye on Rosamond. I know there's various degrees of how effective that particular Facebook site is. But I try to let people, like I let people know that I was speaking here tonight. And what I was speaking about. And then I would think that I should probably come back at some point and address the RMAC again and give you an update, if you want me to. But what other suggestions might people have? Anyone out there to get more awareness out to people? Any ideas?
Los Angeles? And all the stuff's out in the middle? You know? It's, there are long distances. Are there things there that might affect us? I don't know. But how are you going to know if you don't go to the meetings? How are you going to know if you don't go to the site? You know, frankly, until something jumps in your face or threatens your livestock or whatever, you're not going to have an opinion. Would you?
With respect to that, you asked what would it take people to be interested. Obviously, you have so many sites between that 351 sites. What is the site closest to Rosamond? And what's that's still open? And what's the site what happened to the dump that was right next to Rosamond? Is that
Well, the dump is not on the base, and it's part of Kern County.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a dump right next to that though?
Not on the base?
Not on the base.
No.
There never was.
Yeah, decision was that it was not.
Right.
Okay, what's the closest? What's the closest?
The closest one to the base is,
to Rosamond.
to Rosamond is, running real quick through.
There were some old wells that.
Right, we had some that were open in years past, but the ones that are close to Rosamond have been closed, so probably the closest one is in the neighborhood of main base, which is 16 miles from Rosamond.
Well, isn't there one down there that dumps that, because that's fenced off and they had signs around it?
It's not on the base.
Two questions.
Right.
It's the solar people over here not too long ago from the base. They're going to put a big old solar plant from Don Road North up to Better's Will and over to the base. Did you find everything over that area?
No,
There was nothing wrong with that? And
not from a restoration
not from a
standpoint.
restoration standpoint. And then the other thing is, for dollars and cents, it's still going to be hundreds of $1 million more. What kind of job opportunities are out there for high school graduates, college graduates, which are students be looking for?
USA Jobs is the best way to find a job for a government employee, and they're listed. The contractors hire summer hires periodically. We have several contractors that work on the base, both people that sit in our office and work, and also restoration contractors. We have people from the Northridge one of the professors brings all of his students out, so I'll have like 25 students out every other year to tour the base, and a lot of them have come to work with us later on, grad students.
What kind of outreach do you have with Antelope Valley College and or Cal State Bakersfield and or?
We've offered it to everybody. Dr. Upesi periodically, because he's at AV, has let his students know what we're doing. And we give tours to pretty much anyone who wants a tour.
Do you pick up any employees from AV College?
We have, I can't
Not you,
even.
not you specifically, but the contractors, how does that get?
Yeah, the contractors have, sure. And we actually have 2 people in our office who teach at ABC during the evenings. And so they let their students know what's going on, yeah.
Okay.
One question.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Dan. No, go ahead.
One question I had, we talked about that the surrounding communities don't seem to feel like stakeholders.
Right.
Because they're not participating. I'm wondering, what is the commonality between the water resources on Edwards Air Force Base to the surrounding communities? Are they basically drawing from the same areas and stuff like that?
Oh, a huge amount of our water comes from Antelope Valley East Kern. We do pull some from the base, but nobody pulls from our water off the base. We pull from AVEC and then also on base for on-base employees.
It's a different subject.
Well, actually, they're still,
I'm wondering, because typically there's underwater basins and everything in communities.
We're the low point.
Yeah.
So instead of, for the most part, except with the exception of North Base, where it does migrate toward the north, most of it comes into the base as opposed to going off. And so we've got a good system of wells at North Base to be sure that and it's hundreds of years. I mean, I don't know exactly what the time is, but it's a long, long time before, if it ever was allowed to migrate that far, which it wouldn't be, before it would ever be a problem. But almost everywhere, things come into the base and off.
It's a really slow rate of migration because there's a lot of clay.
Yeah, I mean, for South Base, it's in the order of like 30 feet a year, maybe, that it's moving between the two. And so we're cleaning up an area that's not being used for drinking water, but because the state of California says that in the future it could be, we're still required to clean it up.
okay.
Is there still an information repository at the library?
Yes, there
Yes.
is. Yes, at Rosamond Library and I believe at the base.
Right, and at
Library
Lancaster.
at Lancaster.
Just ask for the RAP.
Information repository is what it's called. It's actually the documents that we've produced over the last 20 years.
A couple decades, yeah. They're there, they're in the library, they're on shelves, and we'll look at them.
They're rarely looked at, but they're available.
Yeah.
On your Facebook page, okay, well, I guess what would you like to take with you from our meeting tonight to your meeting on the 5th?
Well, the meeting on the 5th is going to have a very specific focus. I more or less just wanted to let you know that the public is welcome to come to that meeting and to
We would love to have people.
and to hear the discussion. I mean, this is
So the discussion is up here about where chemists are and bio.
No.
It's so basic, even I can understand.
It's too basic.
Yeah, it is.
And are we going to have mud to play in? What's going to make it interesting for kids or what have you?
What, like a little toxic
Have
wave
some
pool?
cookies usually.
Yeah, all right, cookies is good. What do you want?
All right, I gotta share a story. When I was the environmental public affairs guy, one night we had a triple header meeting in Desert Lake by Boron, all involving, well, first it was the Restoration Advisory Board meeting, and then we had that, and then it was adjourned. Then we had 2 specific meetings after that. One to deal with a release of beryllium up at the rocket site. Beryllium was like an oxygen, and it had blown up and was all over the place. And as I understand it, and this goes back a long time, but if it's beryllium oxide, there's no big deal. If it was beryllium itself, it's worse than asbestos. So you really don't want this stuff hanging around. Now, it's in the middle of the Air Force Research Laboratory on the other side of the dry lake right up the mountain, so it's hard to get to. So we had a meeting about that. And then we had a meeting about the cleanup of
Chloroethane.
Huh?
Trichloroethane.
No, the rocket site. Pentaborane. Pentaborane. B5H9. 5 parts boron, 9 parts hydrogen. If this stuff was a liquid, comes in contact with the air is at least 77 degrees, it just starts burning. And cranks up to about, was it 4,300
It's
degrees?
huge, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's 1,500 degrees hotter than it takes to make melt steel. This is some nasty stuff. And the only people who ever dinked with this stuff and lived to tell the tale were the people at AFRL, other than the manufacturer. We had over 500 canisters, 500-pound canisters, stored in open sheds out at the Air Force Research Laboratory, open to the air. They had some slats so they could breathe, and these great big canisters are shoved in there cheek and jowl. And they're getting a little rusty. There's this stuff, you know. So after meetings and meetings and meetings, it went on for forever, they finally decided they were going to do something about it. And they built this containment vessel of 1-inch thick plate steel, was open to the air, put shape charges on them, got a long way away, lit it off, and the shape charge opened the can, and the stuff just started burning. We sent unmanned aerial vehicles through at different distances to see how well this stuff burned as it went. This was some nasty stuff. And this was all part of the proposal with that meeting. We sent out notices to every single postal paper. We had notices at the mine. We had notices in the paper. We picked the wrong night. It was the big game between Boron and Desert High School, the big basketball game. That was a mistake. But that aside, after all that publicity and all that work, we had 12 people show up, including, and I'm not making this up, 3 homeless guys looking for donuts.
Here's a cold line.
Remember that?
Yeah.
That's what's in
We just had a couple more questions though. One is, what are the posters up? You didn't introduce them, why they're important. And
Oh,
two is,
yeah.
who's the guy coming off the bench who's backing you up?
Who's coming off the bench?
Yeah, the alternate.
Les Hazen?
Can you introduce him or do you know?
I mean, I know he works at the college, and we've talked a few times, but.
He's actually been a member for a really long time.
Right,
He used to be the primary resident rep at
Dr. Yahezi is the
Mr.
dean
Anderson.
of math and sciences.
Yeah.
And so we've had him review some of our stuff, some of our chemical stuff, because that's his background. And so he reviewed that for us, where most of the rep members would have been interested in it, he really was.
It's important to know. And
Yeah, well, so what are these charts?
So the chart here is, this is just another depiction of the operating units, the different areas, whether it's north base up here, or the flight line, along the flight line, south base. I'm going to say this is south base right in here. This is AFRL.
the pretty colors you add, or something you added, or did they?
I can't claim any.
The red are the groundwater contaminant funds that we're working on.
Okay, the orange?
The orange is just a color. I don't think the orange is, I think that's just off base. I don't believe it actually has a significance for it.
And the gray is at the low area of the dry lake, or what?
That's the dry lake. Isn't that the big gray? Isn't that mainly the dry lake?
That's the groundwater basin.
Oh.
So they're showing the relation of the plumes.
Right, and there are only a couple places where the contamination has actually made it to the basin, and one of them is minor.
This is one of them,
And then in
right in
North Base.
here, and even this one, it was like Rebecca was saying, some of these are only moving a few feet a year or something like that.
Or a few inches.
Or a
That's
few,
like-
yeah. The other two charts up here are a proposed solution to the old skeet range at South Base. There's a lot of shot that was down there, and there was actually a period for public comment, and if you went to the Rosamond Public Library, which I happened to go by, and so I was able to see a little bit of the area that they were talking about, the area that it was impacting, and
And do they still have the
it's
skeet range?
lead shot and skeet fragments.
Yeah, there is still a ski range on base, trap and ski, that's open 3 days a week.
Okay, but that's not the same one?
That's not the same.
These are, Okay,
Go.
they're my project, it's my project. What happened is we've got this lead shot and skeet target debris. The skeet target debris has something called polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons that can be dangerous to pigs. And then the lead.
What?
Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons that's dangerous to pigs if they eat it. And then we have lead shot. And there are birds that use gravel in part of their digestive process. Things like horned larks and mourning doves. And if they picked up a piece of lead shot and then ingested it for part of this process, it could kill them. And so the state of California and US EPA were saying that we had to pick up every single piece of lead shot out there. And so we wanted to look at a way we could possibly do it. And for like $3 million, there are actually two sites at the South Base. For about $3 million, we could do about a 70% solution where we were covering or picking up 70% of it. There would still be some there. It would be protective in that 70% of it would be gone, but 30% would be less. They weren't really happy with it. And then Mr. Jenkins, our base civil engineer, asked me to come talk to him because when the base tore up the old runway to replace it, we had 550,000 tons of concrete. And it's sitting at South Base right now. And if the base had to dispose of it, it would cost approximately $50 million. So he asked me if there was some way that I could help get rid of some of the concrete. And so I started thinking about it and thought, well, maybe we could just dump concrete on these sites. And so I suggested to him that that was a possibility. He had me talk to the Air Force Civil Engineers Center in San Antonio, which is our headquarters people, the people who handle our funds, and then talk to the regulatory agencies, the same ones that we discussed before. Everybody's on board, and so we're going to use approximately half of the concrete to cover the lead shot and skeet target debris. It'll be a 100% solution. We'll be able to protect all the birds out there and all the pigs, if there happen to ever be any. And for my $3 million, we'll save Air Force $24 million. And we'll start designing and implementing in the next year.
So you have to grind it?
I'm sorry?
You have to grind it?
Mm-hmm. We're going to crush it. And if later on, if you want to look at the second chart a little bit more.
Yeah, that's what I know what that was.
Yeah, what we're going to do is instead of just dumping, say, 3-inch concrete over everything, we went out, we had the biologists go out and look at what kind of critters use the area. And we're going to put some large pieces because the squirrels like to be able to get down places where they're safe. And we're going to have, and the lizards like to have somewhere to bask. And we're going to have some small places because then the coyotes and the rabbits would be willing to go across it to go to these islands that we're going to protect, where we're going to pick up the lead shot and skeet target debris, where we've got Joshua trees, where we have mesquite trees, where we have sagebrush, where we have things that those critters like to use. So we're actually going to enhance the habitat for the critters that use the area while protecting the birds and using the concrete.
A lot of you are probably aware of the drop in oil price, the price of oil. You know, you go to the pumps and you notice gas is significantly cheaper than it has been. It's kind of going up again now. But the price of oil locked in at $55 a barrel for the county this year. Last year, I believe it was $91 a barrel. Oil is our biggest source of revenue in Kern County. I'm not sure if you're aware of that or not. But this is resulting in over a $40 million hit to our general fund this year alone. And a $17 million hit to the fire fund.
You made that up in Kern Medical Center almost all of it.
Yeah, I guess think about it that way. Almost. You know, we're not sure what the impact is going to be to county services yet until the departments, you know, bring their budgets forward. Last year, most departments had to take a 5% budget cut. And, you know, this year, probably future years, they'll have to make cuts as well. Not, you know, not 5% tune, but 1 to 2% cuts to absorb that, and also to prepare for something that is upcoming. Laredo Jail will be opening in 2017, the expansion of that. When AB 109 came out, you know, the state, you know, let go a lot of nonviolent felons. And it became the county's responsibility to house a lot of these people. Kern County did not have the capabilities taking on this huge number of felons. So the state provided some funding to help fund the building and construction of this jail. This is going to open up in 2017, but there is no funding to staff it. You know, the ongoing cost. And that's projected to be between $20 and $30 million a year for the correctional officers and the deputies that would have to work there. So that's another challenge. The Board of Supervisors have been saving up, they have savings in store for this, but it's just another budget challenge upcoming. The Renew This program is something you guys are pretty aware of. Last year, Rosamond had several grants approved, the mural on the Chamber of Commerce building and several others. I've been told the Rosamond Chamber of Commerce building, their projects from last year have just been completed. They have another mural, I guess they did on the south side of the building. They applied for others this year. At the end of this month, the county will be announcing, the winners of the grants this year. Last year, for example, in Rosamond, Warren, and Mojave, 43 applications were received to improve the facades of the businesses in those communities. This year, 90 were received. So we think that's because the businesses around them saw these improvements, realized the money's there, and it's a real program. So hopefully we'll see this program continue and more businesses looking good. The Diamond Street project came in at a higher bid than the county foresaw after they got the community input and did it up to code. So rather than cut down on the project, the county roads department has said that they will still find a way to fund the project at that amount. So that's going to be a $1.9 million project on Diamond Street now. Everyone's pretty much aware that what that's going to entail: the street lights, the stamped intersections, the diagonal parking, all the semantics that go with that, sidewalks, and they're hoping to start that, I believe, between end of March and beginning of April this year. That's really all I have right now. Do you have a question?
I just wondered on the side number.
We had 60 arrests. Of those arrests, 11 were for assaults, 11 for drug offenses, 16 for thefts, 2 for stolen vehicles, and 5 for vandalism.
16 for theft and what?
2 for stolen vehicles and 5 for vandalism.
I'm CHP office. Fortunately for us and our community, this is our slow season. So starting from January 1st to current date, our traffic collisions, we've only had 10 in the area of Rosamond that we've had to investigate. None of those were fatalities or even major injuries, so that's a good thing. And DUI arrests are down. We've only had 9 so far in the Rosamond community, so that's actually excellent. Unfortunately, other communities are keeping us kind of busy, so you're probably not seeing a lot of us right now, but it's actually the need for us isn't as much as it is in a couple other areas that we have responsibility.
Los Angeles County Air Show, which will be in
March 21st, 22nd.
in Lancaster at Fox Field on the 20th, 21st, and 22nd. The 20th, the Thunderbirds actually arrive on the 19th. And that's kind of a big deal. The whole rehearsal on the 20th. They're not going to perform at night. There is a night air show, but the Thunderbirds will perform probably about 2 is the last one I actually.
2 o'clock on Saturday?
I attend those meetings representing these. You working?
Yes.
What are you doing?
You get tickets for us, right, Dennis?
Huh?
You got tickets for us?
It's the Thunderbirds after all.
You know, I left it in my other shoe.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, yeah. You're gonna have to pay me.
I'll send Danny. Danny was
Now,
going to send me a thing with
The
all.
Thunderbirds will perform on the 21st and 22nd, probably about 3 in the afternoon. I just had a call today from an airport in Riverside that is looking to hold a air show. They're asking. So there is some limited support that we can give to that point, and we can do one flyover. We can fly with one event this year. So you get one silver bullet. Where are we going to spend it? You know, I don't. Speaking of which, we're going to have a new general. Brigadier General Brewer has been from Milwaukee. No, he's been put up for a second star and will be moving on to another job. Carl, geez, I think the last name is. Anyway, the guy who's coming in as the new general has been here several times before, which is typically the case. He
Schaefer?
Schaefer. Carl Schaefer was the general's exec for a while, and he's been back and forth with a couple of other assignments. Neat guy, I think you would like it. But we don't have a date yet on the chief of command.
You think maybe?
Speaking of which, I'm picking new honorary commanders. Matter of fact, the list is in. For example, one of the honorary commanders, because we had a Kern County supervisor last time, Nick Gleason, I said, well, why not ours? So Zach Scribner is going to be one of our honorary commanders, and he'll be paired with the operations group commander. The operations group is the group that has all the aircraft squadrons. So I think I'll blast with it.
Does he get a ride in F-16 or not?
No rights. No, that's down to kids. We were told by commanders who wanted to do it this time, not only no, but don't ask again. So that's fine. We hold an induction ceremony that'll be March 4th, and then every other month we'll have an event after that. And also Debbie Keys, who's with the school district, is one of our honorary commanders also. So we got a couple of representatives from Rosamond on the board. And some from Tehachapi this time. It's been a while since we had anybody from Tehachapi. You know?
Laid out with that drop-down menu that gives you things I can see that being a great place to take and put meeting minutes, put the agenda, anything that comes out of the planning department, for example, that requires public comment and stuff like that. Because a lot of times things come in front of the board here and it gets discussed and stuff like that, but I don't think we get too much public comment on it. And as a result, sometimes folks have to go back after the fact to kind of undo some of that. So I've got that page parked at the moment, but I wanted to talk to also the various members of the board here to find out what they would like to see as far as on the title page. I think the seal of Rosamond should be one of the things that's on there. And perhaps if someone has a good idea for a profile picture for the web page, and maybe possibly photos of the members of the board or other council to be put on there as well. There it is.
There we go. So I'll just hover up here for a little bit. Okay, I'm at 134, 150 feet. Now you can see.
Tells you how high you're up?
Yeah. See the altitude, 150 feet. Now I'm gonna turn the camera slowly. You see the wind playing with it a little bit. Okay. Now I'm gonna go ahead and tilt down, and you should see us down here. I'll move it back so you can see us. There we are. See us?
Yeah. Looking down on us.
Now I'm going to turn around and I'm going to tilt the camera up. Okay. I'm going to look back this way to the left. See the skyline a little bit. Let's go over to see Rosamond Chevron. I might have gone too far now, I don't know. When in doubt, you can actually see, like, red means I'm opposite of Rosamond Chevron, so now I should be seeing Rosamond Chevron somewhere over there. Okay, now you'll see it zip pretty quick. I'd say I'm 160 feet, and I'm going 10 miles an hour. Go to the right a little bit. to turn it down. It's usually down.
Pretty cool, Gary.
Yes.
Pretty cool.
It's linear that it actually appears.
Isn't that great? How long will the batteries last to keep it going?
20 minutes.
20 minutes. And then how long to charge them back up?
It takes about an hour.
An hour. So you can have
For both of these units.
a separate pack or separate.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a separate thing.
Yeah.
Just walk away. And like I said, it records stills and
Oh yeah.
it'll do like, what do you call it, the time lapse.
Time lapse. Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, it's really, really cool.
Uh-huh.
And it shoots in 4K.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Sharp. Sharp.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw in 60 Minutes they demoed it. They went to the manufacturer.
Oh, they did.
The GoPro. Oh yeah, and man, some of the clear shots he had.
All of it's on the iPhone.
Yeah.
Again, I lost. You lose GPS a lot.
Yeah.
I'm beginning to understand that.
Yeah.
And that's why you want to make sure that when you're flying it, this is not a toy.
Yeah.
So when you're flying it, you want to make sure you got the right height, and also that you keep it in sight.
Sure. Sure.
And if anything happens, you hit the switch down here, the power switch, and it'll come right back to you because I calibrated for it to do that. So if I had turned the switch off, it would have landed right there, and it lands beautifully.
Yeah.
Better than I actually landed at.